food insecurity, like many of the issues that I know this group has conversations about, is impacted by a number of other intersecting socioeconomic issues as well, right? So when we think about who in our communities might be vulnerable to food insecurity, we need to be mindful of other dynamics that are taking place there as well, right? So minorities in our communities are in a pronounced way more vulnerable to food insecurity than non-minorities. Children are particularly vulnerable to food insecurity. Someone with a disability is particularly vulnerable. Someone who's unemployed, who's lost income, who has less tangible, fungible assets at hand, who has high living costs. All those individuals are much more pronounced to be vulnerable for food insecurity. And sort of if you scan across this page here, right, particularly that bottom line there, and you think about unemployment, income shocks, you think about a reduction in assets, and you think about increases in living costs, that could be one way you might describe the last 10 months of our sort of shared experience as a nation, right? And so then it's no wonder that we're seeing the increases in food insecurity that we are seeing. So economic and social drivers are really important when we start thinking about what food insecurity looks like, who might be vulnerable for it, and how we might begin to solve for it in long-term ways. I want to put a pin in this too, in terms of who is particularly vulnerable to food insecurity in our communities. So data and research tells us that people of color are much more likely to face hunger. And this is not just in North Fulton or Fulton County, this is nationwide. So for example, black households are 2.4 times more likely to be food insecure than white households. And this is a national issue. Before the pandemic, 1 in 9 people in the US, it's about 35 million people, were food insecure annually. After the pandemic, the sort of dual drivers of high unemployment and a rapid rise in poverty as a result of it, we're now dealing with a situation where we're projecting that about 1 in 6 people across our nation are going to be food insecure in this year. That's 50 million people. 1 in 4 kids in our nation, 25% of them. And we're seeing very similar dynamics to what that national picture looks like and what the impact of COVID looks like on our state as well. So kind of pre-COVID, food insecurity was affecting about 13% of our population in the state. Post-COVID, we're up around 16%, so over 25% increase in food insecurity here in Georgia as a result. Here in our service area, across that 29 counties that we are serving, the bulk of the population of the state lives there. So we have a high number of food insecure individuals across that 29 counties, almost 14% of the population. So we're getting close to 900,000 people across that 29 counties, again, who at some point in this year won't know where their next meal is coming from. So a significant increase, again, because of COVID. But I don't want to sort of beat the COVID drum so much that we ignore the fact that even pre-COVID, right, if we're having 11% of the folks who are our neighbors wrestling with this issue, again, we don't have an issue that's just present, we've got an issue that's prevalent. And so the factors that led to that situation were already present and again have been exacerbated because of COVID. So just to look a little bit more granular here, again, this is sort of a county view across our service area. So you can see here the 29 counties that we serve. On the left side of the page, you can see what rates in those counties look like kind of pre-COVID. On the right side of the page, you can see what those rates look like now and are projected to look like post-COVID, and across the board increases. So you can see that dark orange pop out on the right side of the map, where we've got counties now who are approaching almost 20% of the folk living there who are at risk of being hungry. Kids, as I mentioned up at the top, are particularly vulnerable. Households with children are particularly vulnerable to food insecurity because of the increased costs associated with child rearing. And here in the state, kind of pre-COVID, we were already pushing food insecurity rates around 15 to 16%. But what we're seeing now post-COVID is that we've got 23% of our kids are at risk of being food insecure across Georgia. And in our service area, 20% of the children in our service area at risk of hunger. So again, 1 in 5 kids, a dramatic increase there, almost a 50% increase in the number of kids who are at risk of food insecurity as a result of COVID. So that's the current situation we're wrestling with right now. And again, a similar view of a county by county level. And again, you can see across the service area, this is not concentrated in any one county. It's not concentrated in any one geography. You're seeing rural counties impacted just as deeply as you are sort of metro urban counties. So again, the impact, the factors that are involved there and driving that food insecurity are equally spread across a wide variety of socioeconomic regions right now. And so I pulled this map out just to give you a snapshot of what food insecurity looks like in the North Fulton area. As you sort of see those darker orange areas, I guess as they are concentrated in the areas that you would expect them to be, that there are similar intersecting issues that are concentrated also. But I'd hold up here, while there's certainly some dynamics that are unique to the North Fulton community, North Fulton is not isolated from the larger trends that we're seeing regionally at a state level and then nationally, right? So again, significant increases in food insecurity in vulnerable communities already. But again, a widespread prevalence across a geography right now where we've got someone who's touched by this issue almost across all of our neighborhoods and our communities. But in Fulton County, we saw a 50% increase in childhood food insecurity as a result of COVID, right? So almost overnight, 50% more kids living in homes that were vulnerable to not having enough food on the table to provide for them. So I'm going to bring this back up again, right? So the equity issue, the racial disparities on this particular issue are really pronounced. Just highlighting this for just a second. So racial disparities in Fulton County, and this is the county at large. So we live in a county where 15% of people are living below the poverty line right now. When you slice that up, 23% of people of color are living below the poverty line in Fulton County, compared to only 6% of white residents. And so again, that plays out in these very tangible, concrete issues of who has food to eat and how do we get resources to families and individuals who are wrestling with it, and how do we consider and contemplate that dynamic in our work. And it's particularly important for food insecurity work.